discussion. So sorry, let me remove the annotation. So tonight's panel discussion, we have two panelists. We have Pratika, who's from Google Canada. Just a quick, brief introduction of, Pratika. She currently works as a data engineer for Google in the Toronto office. And before joining Google, she worked in ad tech, advertising technology business, banking industries in the data space. And in her spare time, she likes to geek on anything about data, policy, and also politics. So welcome, Pratika. And we also have a second panelist, which is Edwin. Edwin currently works for CPPIB, and he's an expert data engineer and cloud architect, and he specializes in distributed computing, data architecture. He used to work for Loyalty One, RBC, different companies, and he has worked on a lot of the exciting, big data projects in those organizations as well. And Edwin has also been a part-time, instructor teaching, data engineering course at WeCloudData. And as you know, we're launching this, part-time data engineering diploma program. It's going to be led by Edwin and also Pratika. So we're also pretty excited about this. All right, let's get started. So I have a list of prepared questions, and let's go through them first. And at the end, we'll leave the floor open, and anyone, everyone can ask questions. Okay, and I'll take some notes on those questions you guys asked along the way, and we can address them at the end. So the first question is, well, tell us about yourself and how you got into data engineering. Pratika, you want to start first?
Yep, I can go first. Hi, everyone. Oh, wow, I see echo in my sound. Am I audible to everybody?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, thank you for that introduction, and I'm very glad that all of you have joined us today for this discussion. So about myself, actually, Shawa has already given that introduction, so I'll skip that. But how did I get into data engineering? I've been working. I have overall 5.5 years of work experience, and I was working for a bank in India. That's where I'm originally from. And at that time, there wasn't really a role called data engineer. It was more around software engineering and software engineers who used to do data work. So I just got into it by chance. It was not planned. It was just that my team was running a lot of Hadoop jobs, and they wanted to migrate from Hadoop to Spark. And that's how I got introduced to both the ecosystems. And then it was something that I really enjoyed. I started reading more about distributed programming and how these systems work in general. And then I dabbled in data science for a while, but I kept coming back to data engineering because I thought it was such a core component of getting anything done with data. And yeah, that's my story. And since that, I've pretty much stuck to data engineering, and now I've been doing it at Google for about 2 years.
Okay. Thanks, Pratika. Edwin? You want to do a quick self-introduction and how you get into data engineering space?
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Pratika and Shaohua, for the introduction. So yeah, so hello everyone. Thank you very much for coming tonight and joining us for the panel discussion for how to become a data engineering. So just basically talk about how I got myself into the space. Very similar, like how Pratika got herself in to become data engineer. So I was kind of started my kind of data journey around 2013. Back then, it's kind of Hadoop was kind of like a famous in the industry, but in terms of adoption in the Canada market, I pretty much we were the early adopter to using Spark, Kafka, and even AWS. Back then, it was kind of like a new thing. So like my background is pretty much coming from data, kind of software developer background. But back then we were having a lot of data challenges, like the data that we were trying to keep up with, it's just simply way too big. And we have to, came up with a solution, to solving those technical challenges. That's pretty much how, I got myself involved with, in this space. And eventually they're just, like keep more and more, the data getting more complicated in terms of the varieties and also in terms of the volumes. And yeah, so never sort of challenges, and the industry just keep up with new solutions to tackling those kind of challenges. And yeah, just always keep myself engaged in the industry, doing research. And yeah, that's kind of how I get myself in the space. Yeah, back to you, Xiaohua.
Thanks, Edwin. Thanks, Pratika, for the self-introduction. Well, you both come from a software engineering background, so but I'm pretty sure you'll get questions regarding if someone's not coming from a software computer science background. Do you have any suggestions? So we'll leave that to the end. Second question: what is your day at work like? Edwin, you want to go first?
Yeah, absolutely. So currently I'm working in CBPIB. So roughly speaking, my day usually break into several parts. I'm currently kind of like mentoring a data engineering kind of team with a size of 6 people. So my daily tasks is to helping them to removing technical challenges so that they can keep themselves going, and also kind of looking at any technical challenges. Let's say, for example, if the job is running long, like how we can optimizing the process and how we can tune the parameters so that the job can run in an efficient manner, and also engaging with kind of the business stakeholders and discuss how we can making sure that data is in a good shape and they can query it in a very efficient fashions. So basically, my day pretty much break it down into like in mentoring, and I writing code, for 50% of my time during the day, and also spending, sometimes to, engaging with the business stakeholders to making sure I understand what kind of, what's the challenge they're facing and how we can help them, to removing those blockers. Yeah, that's it for me. Back to you, Xiaohua.
Thanks, Edwin. Pratika, how about you? What's your typical day like at Google?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Every day is kind of different. So I work on the professional services arm of Google Cloud, which means that I work with Google's external customers and help them work with Google Cloud products. One of my customers, they're an enterprise retail customer based out of US. And currently, the last 6 months, I've been working on moving one of their legacy data warehouses to BigQuery, which is Google Cloud's data warehouse. So given that it's a legacy warehouse and we're moving it to a different platform, my week is kind of divided into 2 parts. One is where we try to brainstorm how we're going to move it. And we do that in bits and pieces. Like we do small proof of concepts around things like if we move this query from this platform to another, what does the efficiency look like? How fast will it run? What's the performance metric? What schema changes we might need to do, and all the technicalities around that. So we try to do proof of concepts, a lot of them, and then if something clicks, that's when we try to scale it for multiple queries and multiple things in the platform. The other side of the project is because these things, it's a longer project. It requires at least 1 year of effort. That means that there are business timelines also that we have to cater to. So my job is also to report it to the business that how we're doing and what our timelines look like and how quickly we'll be able to do it, and if there are any risks involved. So it's a good mix of actually honing the technology skills and also seeing the day-to-day impact on a customer's business, because that actually adds value to my day and actually makes me feel like I'm working towards something that has an end goal and a very tangible value. So yeah, it's been fun so far. Back to you, Shaha.
Thanks. All right, let's move on to the third question. So what is your understanding of data engineering? Earlier I talked about different types of data engineers. It's kind of hard to define. Would love to hear your thoughts on this. And also, just a follow-up small question. I think folks might be interested in knowing like the difference or similarities between data engineer and also, other roles like data scientists, data analysts, or machine learning engineers. Who wants to go first?
I can take this up.
Sure.
So data engineer, like Shava mentioned, the start is it's difficult to define it, but I'll give you a very small example of what your work might look like. Let's say that you're working on anything, really building an app website, and you're taking some data from somewhere, somebody gives you that in a CSV file. You want to put that data in a database, query it, or make a machine learning model on it, or whatever your plans are. That's where the data engineering aspect of it starts. So in this progress, even before you need to do machine learning model, you have to show that data to some other customer or do anything with it. You have to clean that data, transform it, put it into a database where it's queryable, or do all sorts of things with it. And then let's say next time that same source person comes to you and gives you a file that is in a different format. So you have to also build checks in your data pipeline so it doesn't break and it's resilient. Let's say they bring in more data. Right now they're bringing 1 GB, tomorrow onwards, they start to send you 50 GB worth of data. How does your pipeline scale? Basically, all of those elements comprise of a data engineering role. And as you grow in your role, you'll have all of these challenges at different levels. So a junior data engineer would probably deal with mostly getting data from one place to the other, but a senior person would probably deal with maintaining that data pipeline, the resiliency of that pipeline, how much load can it handle. So anything that happens from once you get the data to when you put it where a data analyst or a data scientist can use it is, according to me, the job of a data engineer. And the difference in similarities, this is different for different people because all of us have been in the industry and we've had our experiences. But in my experience, when I was doing data science, and why I went back to data engineering was because it was very difficult to do data science when there was not clean data or clean data that was coming in. So I spent a lot of my time actually just cleaning that data, making sense of it, and making sure it was consistent. There was no null pointers, null values, checks getting failed, and things like that. So I think maintaining that integrity of the data is very important before you start doing anything with it. And that's how I think data engineering role differs from like a data scientist role or a data analyst and things of that nature. But in most companies, at least the companies that I've worked for, I've seen people do like a lot of things. There's been a lot of overlap in what people do. So if you're working in data science, you might be interested in picking up a data engineering skill or vice versa. So yeah, there are definitely a lot of similarities and a lot of differences. And depending on where you want to grow in your career, you can pick either sides and go down that route.
Thanks, Pritika. How about you, Edwin?
Yeah, I think Pritika has a very good summary in terms of what the data engineering do, and what kind of the difference and similarities between data engineering and other kind of data related roles. I just want to add a little bit in terms of my observations. So I think data engineering is kind of the foundation of any digital transformations in any organization at any scale. So the reason for that is because without the data, there just simply cannot making like any decisions, right? So I say data engineering is the core of all those digital transformations, and becoming having the data in a good shape, in a proper governance, while making the whoever going to making the decision, giving them the confidence that the decision will coming from a trustworthy source, right? So I see a lot of data scientists will struggle with their models and with the parameters, but eventually it's just simply because of the data, it wasn't transformed in a way that can become usable for the data scientist. So I say like in my opinion, like the data engineering doing a good job is a starting journey of everything, like in the current IT department. So that's kind of my little bit add on in terms of how I see the role of data engineering become in the current organizations. Back to you, Shahua.
Thanks, Edwin. Love the answers. Question number 4, how's the data engineering job market? What does it look like? Or I shared some numbers, but for example, when you're hiring data engineers or helping your company hire a data engineer, what's the demand like, and how does that work?
Yeah, maybe I can take this one
Sure.
first. And okay, so I'm helping my kind of a current organization to interviewing different candidates. So I see that it's a huge demand. Just for myself, there's a lot of recruiters contacting me on a daily basis for interesting opportunities and challenges. So I say the market is super hot, despite the fact that we're under a kind of pandemic. But still, I see that the passions from in terms of the employer trying to get in good data engineering into their organization, I see that this trend is keep going up. Despite the fact under the current circumstances, it's still in a huge demand. So I say the market is super hot, and one of the interesting thing is my real estate agent asking me to helping him to to analyzing some of the data, so he want to see a trend. So as you see that for the individual, they're still trying to leveraging what's available and understanding the data so that they can helping their clients to making investment decisions. So I say this market is hot, and I see the trends just going to keep keeping up. That's kind of my observations. And back to you, Xiaohua.
Thanks. And Pritika, how about you?
Yeah, +1 to everything Edwin said. There's definitely there's demand in the market, and we don't have enough talent. There's one little anecdote that I would share is that currently, because we're in a pandemic, a lot of companies, and maybe you'll hear in the news also about it, they're taking the cloud journey. They are like moving from a traditional data center setup because it costs a lot of money to maintain it and scale data centers, and they're moving towards cloud, which is more flexible, which is more pay as you go. Now, when these transitions happen, a lot of job opportunities created, especially in the data space and infrastructure space. So a lot of DevOps or data engineering openings are happening because they need people who understand the who can take data from one place to the other, who understand the intricacies of it. So I think that's why the pandemic has kind of accelerated the move to cloud, and hence the move and hence the openings for data engineering and all of these infrastructure roles that we see around us. So that's one little thing that I have observed in the market, that definitely there's demand, and it's only growing with the how cloud is kind of making our life easier. Back to you, Shah.
Thanks. Interesting. So I think when a lot of companies start to move to or migrate to the cloud, there will be a good demand for talents or experts who can help them do data migration as well. Like data migration is probably the first step after they have all the infrastructure set up, and they need to understand data lake and also all the databases and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
Thanks for the answers. Let's move on to question 5. We got this question a lot. Students, or people we talk to, giving advice to, they usually most of these are career switchers, and they are always deciding on whether I should choose data analytics, data science, or data engineering. And someone is coming from, for example, electronic engineering, or coming from mechanical engineering. They do come from engineering background, but they still need to learn Python or maybe Scala and learn all the new things. So they're always wondering how do I know if data engineering is the right path for me, or vice versa? How do I know if data science is the right path for me? But we're speaking about this from a data engineering perspective, and I would like to hear your thoughts on this. Edwin, you want to go first?
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, it's really about whether you like to take the challenges and see it all the way through until the end and deliver a solution. And along the way, there's going to be a lot of challenges in terms of the things you do not know, and or areas or the domain that you are not familiar with, and how you are able to navigate through all those challenges and able to deliver a solution. Right. So if you can ask yourself this question and the answer is yes, then I say definitely it doesn't really matter your background. Like you can come in, from a background of, say for example, mechanic engineering, or coming from a database administrator. But if you having, curiosity in, as the core, and able to do your own research, to do your own experiments. And I say, this is pretty much the right directions for you. But if you think about, like writing code, or like solving problems are challenging for you, or it's not really your kind of your favorite part of the job, then I say you probably need to think about some other kind of data related role, like data analyst, that can probably making the job a little bit easier. So that's kind of my take on on this topic. Back to you, Xiaohua.
Thanks. Pritika, how about you?
I would think that it's so let me answer it another way. Before I think when we try to figure out if something's the right path for us or not, we are kind of apprehensive that if I go down this route, would it be good for my career or not? The good thing about technology is that all of these skills, these are very transferable. So let's say that you try data engineering for a year and you say that, okay, this is not my cup of tea, I don't really enjoy my job. Nobody's going to stop you to switch to a data science career or a data analytics career. All your skills are very much transferable. There'll be times in your job when your data engineering background and coding background will actually help you. And let's say you start to like it a lot and you say, oh, well, I just don't want to work with data. I want to work with more things. I want to work with application development or mobile development. That's when you can go to the software engineering route also. So I would say that explore it and see if it's for you, because you're not losing anything if you explore it, and there'll never be a regret that, hey, I didn't try that path. So, and there are multiple ways that I think technology works. Even within Google, there are so many. Like I can give my own example. When I started with software engineering. Like I said, I did a bit of data engineering, went back to data science, and then came back to data engineering. Now, I could have had like that straight path, but I did not. And I really don't regret it, because all of these skills have somewhere helped me really in my current job. So really, there's no right versus wrong. If you think you are developing an interest in it, don't overthink it. Try building some pipelines and see if you have interest, and then let's see where that takes you.
Thanks. That's a great answer. So question 6, I think we have 2 more questions left, because I would like to leave more time for the Q&A at the end. So question 6, do you have any advice for people who are switching career to data engineering? I think you sort of touched on this already. Pritika, do you want to start from, you want to start?
Sorry, I was on mute. I'm just reading some questions on the chat also, and somebody actually asked something very similar to this. Albert asked that how open are the companies to accept a person who came from a different background of education to become a data engineer? So I'll compile it with the career switchers question. So the 2 types maybe career switchers that we're talking about here. One is that you do not have probably a STEM degree and you're trying to move into a data engineer or similar position. And the other is where you're already working in technology, let's say data science or data analyst, and you're trying to work in data engineering. I think both of these are in their own right, very different paths. So one of my first advice is to be don't be afraid of it, because when I was going through this path, and I have a lot of friends who are doing similar things. In fact, my roommate's actually making that move right now. She's moving from healthcare to a coding background, and she was really scared when we started scouting courses for her. And so like, don't be afraid, because there are people all around you who are doing it. So it's a very natural thing to do. So you'll have a lot of support. The second thing is that companies, they need you, like they need talent, right? So as long as you're talented and you're able to prove your worth and you're able to prove your skills, they'll be happy to take you. They need somebody to get the job done in the time that they have, and they'll always be open to good talent. So I think if you prove yourself in the interview and you prepare well, no company will say that you're coming from so-and-so background and that's why we won't take you. We're in the age of remote anyway with the pandemic, and you'll see people from all over the place doing interesting stuff. So I don't think in current scenario that would be a blocker. Now, in terms of if you're coming from a data science, data analyst background, it's really about in sort of advice, I would say, like, join a course if you think that's join a course if you think you need a very streamlined path to learn this, right? Because usually courses are very good to give you a glimpse of how to learn a skill end to end. At least that's what it does for me, that end to end I know I'm getting a comprehensive set of skills that I'll need for a job. So scout courses and see, okay, this is what this course is teaching me, XYZ, these are the boxes that I'll get checked if I do this course, and then these are the skills that I attain. So figure out what kind of skills you will need for that. Figure out 4 or 5 companies that you aim to apply for, some of your dream companies, see their data engineering roles, see what they ask for, and just pick up those skills, work on those skills for 6-7 months, see how you're doing, and then take it from there. It'll be a journey. It's not going to be easy. It'll take a lot of time to adjust, but it'll be worth it in the end, because obviously you want to do it. So yeah, that's the 3 things that I would focus on, is that don't be afraid, and companies are always looking to hire good people, so don't worry about that. And third, invest in just the skills, and see how that goes. Now back to you, Edwin.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Pratika. That's a really good summary in terms of the advice to for the folks who are trying to switch their career. I just want to echo back. I say like, do not be afraid of the challenges, because that's why you get getting a high pay. Because the job itself, it's not easy. So, and you need to develop a lot of skills. So that's why it's high paying job. And another advice I like to say that, always having students and my colleagues asking me like, okay, why should I go to your course? Why can't I just get a buy something from Coursera or some other online portal? It's cheap, like $20. I can learn skills, right? So my answer usually to that is, okay, if you are already in this space for like a relatively like a long time, and kind of exactly what you're looking for, for a single, say for example, technology or skills or whatever, then yes, maybe go to Coursera is a good choice. However, we're talking about you need a very constructive, technology systems that you have, that will preparing you for a future jobs or interviews, and also the networks. So I say, like institution like WeCloudData can prepare you, for the future success, right? So because me and Pratika and all the instructors in WeCloudData has been working in the industry for like a really long time, and we know exactly what kind of skill sets that you're looking for in order for you to become a success candidates for any job interview, right? So I say, this is my biggest advice. Take a look on what contents are being provided in the course, in the diploma, and and see how those kind of skill sets and technologies will prepare you and become a success candidates in the future. So that's kind of my take on that. Back to you, Xiaohua.
Thanks, Edwin. My advice here is that like, if you're at the beginning stage, like you're just exploring this career, career path here, you obviously you can choose data science and data engineering, or even data analytics. There are a lot of common skills you need to acquire. For example, SQL, Python. You should definitely start from by learning some of these, picking up these skills. And if you're not sure about what data science is, what data engineering is, I would recommend you to actually take some online courses, just so you have a basic sense and idea, and then go talk to experts. And in talking to people will always help, and hear different perspectives, and then that will help you make an informed decision. And just to echo on what Pritika has said, I also start to see like a lot of people from a data science or data scientist background thinking about switching to data engineering or machine learning engineering. That's something interesting I've observed. So yeah, I totally agree. Like the skill sets, there are a lot of overlap. So it's actually not that hard for a data scientist to switch to data engineering. And of course, there are a lot of new things you need to learn, and the focus of the job is different. But I've also seen like data engineers changing career path, or software engineers who's more into AI and machine learning algorithms. And so yeah, so that's my advice here. Thanks. Okay, cool. I think that's the end of my questions. We've got some great questions in the Zoom group chat as well. So let's get to some of those questions. Please keep sending questions to the group. You can even just unmute yourself and speak up. But first of all, I would like to give a big shout out to Rob. Rob is currently, he's a recruiter with ApplyBoard. They're looking for a lead data engineer. And they are cloud native, and there's great opportunity for you to build a data engineering practice working with data scientists. So if you're interested, Rob has already left his email, so feel free to contact him. All right, so let's get to some of those questions. First question from Albert: what is the most popular programming languages a data engineer would use?
Maybe I can take just my take this one first, and Pritika can commenting from her perspective. So I've seen several switch in terms of the popular programming languages during the past few years. So in the early 2014 and 15, I see like a big spikes on Scala. The reason is simply because it was originally written in Scala, and to interacting with this API, using Scala is kind of the first the easiest way to get into it. And starting from 2016 and 2017, I see a blend in terms of Java and Scala, just because of there is a big demand in the industry, and there's a lot of Java developers, and the Java and the Scala can interact with each other without any issues. So I see a big spikes on Java, and I think starting from 2017 to now, because of the blending in terms of there's data scientists writing code and data engineering writing code, and somehow there's going to be some overlap that need to putting things together. So a universal languages that able to basically usable for both parts, which is kind of like a Python, become very, very popular. And these days until now, I see Python is the most popular programming languages for data engineer. Even in my current organization, we switched from Scala to Python for the past few years, and yeah, so that's kind of what I'm seeing in terms of how the industry in terms of programming languages has been like evolving for the past few years. And Pritika, like, what's your take on this one?
Yeah, 100% agree with Edwin. When I started, it was all about Java, and that's what I studied in undergrad also. And nowadays, every company that I talk to also, and within my company, a lot of the work can be done with Python, and a lot of tools are very much compatible with that kind of scripting. So yeah, you're totally bang on. Like Python can be a good starting point if you're starting, especially now.
Thanks,
Which
Pritika.
tool works with Python?
Plenty actually. So let's say you are trying to orchestrate pipelines. So there's an open source platform called Airflow. You can basically write all sorts of orchestration of your data pipelines with Airflow. So these are kind of like some of the new data tools that are coming out, which actually work very well with Python, SQL, and Java. So it's really a good mix. And the good thing about programming languages, I think, is that if you pick one, it is relatively easy to pick the other ones. So I don't think of this as something that's going to stop you. In fact, if you look at a lot of company job descriptions, when they write that this is the language that we're looking for, some companies also write that if you don't know this language, that's all right. We're looking for somebody who can learn and who has a strong knowledge of some programming language, because these skills are pretty much transferable. And basically, if you have an aptitude for one, you'll be able to pick up the next one also. So yeah, don't worry too much about it. Just get started with something, and yeah, go from there.
And how about Databricks?
Databricks is mostly a Spark-based platform, I believe. So mostly Scala and Java would be the ones there.
Thanks,
you.
Pratika. So moving on to the next question. So there's some private questions here as well. So how to get started in data engineering path? If someone has a background in data analytics, what are some of the language and path one should start with? Is ETL background required for being a data engineer?
I can take that one. ETL is just one of the things. ETL, which is extract, transform, and load. It's basically a standard paradigm that is just one thing. There might be database migrations that you have to do. There might be orchestration. So let's say you have let's say you have a data pipeline running that says 10 a.m. this source file comes to you in CSV in an Excel or something like that. And once you do some analysis, you do some checks on that data, at 11 you have to take that data and put it into a table, and then from there it goes somewhere. So like, let's say you have that kind of a system and you have to orchestrate these things. That is also part of data engineering. So ETL is also a very core component of it, but there are other components also that make data engineering what it is. ETL is a good place to start because it is one of the core components, and you will kind of pick up the other things as you pick up ETL. Yeah. Was there a second part of this question that I missed out?
It's for someone coming from a data analytics background. Any suggestions? What is the path they should go down?
Data analytics, I think we covered this a bit, but just to be more prescriptive, if you are, depending on what skills, think of it like a toolbox, right? Like I said, like go see some company websites and see what they're hiring for. Think of it like a toolbox and see what kind of skills you already have, what skills are missing, and aim to gather those skills. So if the company says that you're looking for strong programming language, then pick up one of those, pick up Java or Python or Scala, because that's these are the prevalent languages in the data space. One will lead you to the other. In terms of just some concepts like ETL concepts or dimensional modeling or distributed programming, these are things that you'll have to study a bit more and understand how these programs work on the back end and how data processing works at big scale. If a lot of data is coming in, how do you handle all of that? So these are concepts that you'll learn with time, and yeah, just go from there.
Thanks, Pratika.
Do you want to add something to that?
Ed, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I say, I think Pratika has, all the, kind of good information there. I just want to say, ETL is only a small part in terms of what data engineering, do. So, but switching from ETL developer definitely going to, help in terms of how to, understanding in terms of, how the data flowing through the ecosystem. But there's going to be, like a more, components on top of it in order to having a more efficient and robust and resilient distributed systems. So I say, it definitely help, but there's going to be a lot of additional skill sets need to be picked up in order to be efficient in a job as a data engineer. Back to you, Xiaohua.
Thanks. Yeah, I think ETL is probably a narrow definition of data engineer, because people, traditionally speaking, people tend to relate data engineer job to ETL engineer. I think, it was true, but I think, the modern data engineering is a lot more broader. Yeah, so I guess my advice here is that if you come from an ETL background, right, for example, you might be from, you work for a bank, you're familiar with data stage and those tools like Informatica or Talent. What you need to do or learn in terms of upskilling is you probably need to learn some of the modern frameworks such as Apache Spark, get comfortable with coding in Scala and PySpark, to learn how to scale data pipelines and data processing. That's one thing to learn for sure. And Hadoop, big data knowledge is obviously very helpful as well. Next question from Halim. What certs are worthwhile obtaining? So the question is about data engineering certifications. I think
I don't have a comprehensive list of certifications that would help, but one that I'm seeing trend in the industry is for cloud certifications. So if you can get one for any of the major cloud providers, that would really help your career, because like I said, a lot of the companies, even like enterprise legacy companies, they are moving to cloud and they are looking for people who understand data in terms of cloud. So yeah, if I were in that situation, I would probably pick a certification from GCP or AWS or the likes.
Yeah, I agree. Kind of having a general cloud, let's say for example Azure or AWS or GCP, if you get a certificates for any of those, I think that's going to be like a good starting point, a good foundation. And so far, I think there's no college or university giving you certificates to like certify you as a data engineer. And WeCloudData is kind of the pioneer in the industry. So I say this definitely adding a lot of values in your resume, especially when you are new in a space and trying to, like knock on the door for, different employers. I think this definitely going to help you to, open up the conversations. Yeah, so that's kind of my take on that.
And I would love to plug in my ads here. Sorry, guys. Our diploma program for data engineer, we actually help students to prepare for the GCP, the Google Cloud Professional Data Engineer certification. I really think that's an awesome one. We've had a couple of students, and actually our teaching assistant all got certified in that as well. I've worked with companies that, that when they hire data engineers, the first thing they need to do, or the first target in the first quarter, is just to get certified so they can put you on projects. So that's a really good one to have. And there are not that many data engineering certifications out there yet. I think Microsoft has one as well, probably. Next question. Let's see. AWS or Azure or GCP? We might all be opinionated and biased, but yeah, it will be great to hear your thoughts on this as well from the two experts.
I work for Google, so GCP all the way.
For sure. How about you, Edwin? I think you had more AWS experience in the past, right?
Yeah, I say, if you want a list of, comprehensive services, I think AWS is probably like a little bit ahead of the game compared with other two, cloud provider. But that's just my opinion. But I say GCP definitely is on a raise in terms of the market adoptions. And I see a lot of companies starting to switching over to GCP because of, Google really know how to manipulating the data really well. So I say, GCP definitely is something that, going to, play a very important role for the long run, especially if company have, kind of like data intensive, computation and query. I think GCP is the way to go. But, I like what I said, every single cloud provider has its own pros and cons. And yeah, AWS is just having more services comparing with, kind of like other two vendors. But yeah, I say, like GCP is on my radar in terms of how I want to getting my certificates for the next one. So yeah, that's kind of my take on that, Shahwa.
Thanks. So Rob just posted some job information, but he also had a really good question. I have to dig that up one second. I think the question was, sorry, bear with me. The question was, how would you make a lead data engineering position or role attractive to data engineers? Because I think Rob is trying to hire someone to be a lead data engineer. Your thoughts on this?
Edwin, do you want to go first?
Yeah, Edwin, you're sort of like the lead data engineer. So yeah. So what makes it attractive to you, I guess, Edwin?
Okay, so Okay, so basically, let me just going through my thinking process as a lead engineering, like what's the important factors can play a final decision. So first of all, I think the the team itself has to be very strong in terms of everyone has its own kind of like a strong areas, like someone's really good at knowing, like let's say DevOps, and someone really good at kind of services, like let's say for example know how to train Spark, and someone knows cloud services really well, they're able to like put the pieces together and keep it going. So I think having a strong team and everyone has these good areas that the lead can learn things from all those peers, at the same time can producing something really productive and resilient, so that can really help the companies to grow their data ecosystem. And second will be the in terms of the visions of the management, right? Like what's the long-term goal and how you want to transform your organizations, in the next 2 to 5 years. Like what is the end targets, right? And I think this is very important kind of information for the lead engineer to understand and fully on board. The third topic I think everyone interested and everyone care is about a compensation package. It has to be in a package in a way that really helping the lead engineering to differentiate with kind of in terms of the contributions within the team, right? I think generally speaking, those three areas are the areas that like just me personally care the most when I thinking about taking a lead position. Pratika, what'd you take on this one?
Yeah, like agreed. I really like the last point about aligning the goals with what the business goal looks like. I think that is the key to any in climbing any type of corporate ladder, because I think business plays a key role in what kind like tech is an enabler, right? We are working towards a business and an efficient and a profitable one at that. So aligning your goals to the business and seeing how your team can do their best to do something for the company is always helpful. And I think the fastest careers growths that I've seen are people who have done that. So yeah, definitely a +1 for that one from me.
Thanks. There's a question from Kazim. How can I make my resume stand out with no prior experience related to data? What do companies look for while hiring freshers or career switchers with no relevant experience? So the question is basically about experience.
I can start with this one. I'll do some shameless plug here, but take our course. But also because we'll be doing a lot of labs and a lot of hands-on exercises, and that comes to my actual point is GitHub is free, it's open source. Start building something and push it to GitHub. A lot of companies will actually in your application ask for a GitHub link or something. Put that in, they can actually go through your code and see that you have the capability to do it, have good readme files and all of that, explain your code well, comment it, follow the best practices, and it'll be sure to get you an entry into the door. When companies hire for junior folks, they are not looking for experts. They're not looking for somebody who's going to come in and change the game. Like, sure, if you can do that, that's amazing, but that's not the expectation as such. The expectation is that you understand the role, you understand how you can contribute to the business, and then you're willing to invest into it and grow. So as long as you're able to prove that you understand the technology, you've dabbled with it, you're comfortable working with it, and you are willing to invest more time and energy into it, they'll be more than happy to give you an interview and see how things go. Edwin, what do you think?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. I think being a kind of like fresh in the field, and I think my recommendation will be try to find some set projects that you can really contributing to, and and trying to maximizing in terms of your spans, in terms of technology contribution, as well as the business domain, knowledge as much as possible, and using that as a single point that you can demonstrating that you have the, curiosity to learn, and you're willing to contribute, and you're able to working with a team, and getting things deliver really fast. I think using those set projects, or like a projects that you can pick up from school, or from your course, that definitely going to giving you something to talk about and discuss, and really impress your interviewers, so that you can get increase your opportunities to get a job offer. Back to you, Shafa.
Thanks. Yeah, and I mean, if you're concerned about experience, right, in data engineering, may I suggest that, because modern data engineers are relatively a new job role and title. So the good news for you is that a lot of companies are trying to hire modern data engineers who know big data, Apache Spark, and cloud. So for the traditional data engineers who work on ETL, right, using a different set of stacks and tools, they need to upskill themselves as well. Like, I think companies want to hire someone who can learn really, really quickly, who's passionate about this. So I think what you should highlight on your resume is that, because it's really just 10-15 seconds to build that connection, even without seeing that person in person, in person, right? So experience doesn't have to be work experience, but like the common mistakes I've seen on resumes is that people will take all kinds of courses and throw a lot of keywords on the resume, but I just don't see a project that's like applying all the skills or the tools they know to solve some kind of practical challenge. I think in data science space, you can work on Kaggle competition. That's great. I wouldn't consider Kaggle competition as end-to-end pipeline though. But for data engineers, I think it's a little bit even hard. Like, it's even a little bit harder to prove that you have experience, because you can know all kinds of tools, but it's hard to prove that you have experience. But working on projects is absolutely important, and so yeah, GitHub and things like that. But it's not just taking a course and doing some exercises using Apache Spark. That's too narrow. Building a data pipeline and something like that. That's my suggestion. Okay. Let's move on. I finished Python for data science and machine learning, including big data. I'm looking for an intern. Oh, so the question is to Rob. I think Rob has already answered it. Okay, question from Sean. How do you think someone can determine they are interview ready in terms of the level of their coding skills in a language like Python or SQL? Also, what is the level of skill difference gap between that needed for an entry-level data science role, data engineering? And the first question is, how do you tell if someone is interview ready?
I think the key to it is practicing a lot with friends and family, and then basically just getting in the game. I think giving a lot of interviews at multiple companies will make you realize what your strengths are, and also if there are any weaknesses that you want to work on. So a lot of times, like, I've also done it in the past, where like when I was interviewing when I came to Canada, a lot of times I used to take so I would talk to a recruiter, and they would be like, yeah, we would like want to go to the next steps with you, and I would be like, oh well, give me a month or two to prepare. And that was my day job, and still I was asking for so much time, because I was like, oh well, I'm not interview ready. But over time I realized that actually there's no part of it that would ever feel like I'm absolutely ready, because a lot of it is like unpredictable. Also, you don't know what they're going to ask. You cannot imagine all the questions, all the combination of questions they can ask you. So I think the best way is to practice with friends, family, see how what you're doing in your current role, getting the most out of that. In terms of learning, a lot of interviews will actually focus on what you do right now and base questions on that, and see if you have enough depth with what you do right now, and then just go in the market and see what your strengths are and what areas of improvement are there, if any. Yeah. Edwin, anything to add there?
Yeah, I agree with you. Just my take on this one is you can't really predicting what's going to be the interview process going to be looks like, right? And in my like countless amount of interview process, there's are some like good interviews, like it's really conversational based on your experience or your backgrounds, and asking you the question and see whether you really think deeply on the areas you have been worked before. But there's some interviews like just asking you, okay, what is the left joint, what is the right joint, right? So there's like fundamental questions like that can also pop up during the interview. So I say just trying to preparing yourself for the foundations. Let's say, for example, knowing how to how like shuffle works in Spark, or how to increase the parallelism so that you can get your job run faster in Spark. All those kind of foundations you should know by heart. And hopefully the interview process can be like more like a function conversational based, and can be a scenario driven, like giving you a scenario, and the interviewer really want to understand your thinking process, and you can demonstrating as much as possible within a 45 minutes time span, and helping them to understand that you are able to think independently and delivering a solution by yourself. And if it's really challenging and tricky question with a little bit helps and hint and advice, it can really come up with a common understanding in terms of the solution, will help the interviewer build the confidence that you are qualified kind of candidates. So that's kind of my take on that. And for the second question, what is the level of skill difference gap between that needed for an entry-level data science role, data engineering? So I'm not really sure I understand the question. Maybe Xiaohua, I think this is more like the gap between a data scientist and a data engineering role. I'm not sure comprehending the question.
Yeah, sure. If you can maybe ask the question again, just to elaborate on that a little bit, that would be great, and we'll get to that later. So we're moving on. Praveen, question is, how much similarity is between DevOps and data engineering, or data engineers?
Maybe I can take this one first, and Priya can put more comments on top of that. Okay, so basically there currently I see there is a central team that doing kind of like a CI/CD piece, right? So when we see DevOps, different company comprehending these keywords in a different kind of fashion. Some people, some department or some people treating it as a role, or some people treating it as a kind of like a functional units. But I think it's really a culture. It's kind of like automation driven, continuous integration and continuous delivery in the backbone of the deliveries, so that your system can really operating in a very efficient fashion. I think that's the key, and that's the a culture that any organization should be moving towards to. But in terms of being a data engineering, like if the question is whether a data engineering requires any automation skill sets, or to be participating on those kind of activities, I say definitely yes. The reason is simply because you got like people usually say you got to eat your own like dog foods. So it's similar in this scenario that a lot of the components and the services and the infrastructure as a code, no one knows this better than yourself from data engineering perspective. So I say there's going to be a lot of time that there's going to be, let's say, consultant, or there's existing code base available in the internet, and you just need to know how to copy and paste and modify, and then try, and making sure that there's some CI/CD piece can keep it going. And that's from a requirements, or from a to getting your job done as data engineering. I think that's good enough. that's my take on this topic. And Pratika, like, what's your take on this one? Based on your experience working in in Google and different other companies.
Yeah, very similar. I think at a lot of companies, there's a central team that manages it, and they kind of take care of all the infrastructure aspect of things. But given that your team will actually interact with theirs at some point, so there's basically a mutual give and take there, and some how do I say it, like some standards to keep in mind of how you're building, and maybe you have your downstream or upstream to that system. So kind of keeping those things in mind, and also the integrity of the system. So some best practices that they use and things like that. So I think this is something that's part of a company culture, and it'll flow as you start to work in an organization, depending on what they use and how they use it. Yeah.
Thank you both. Next question from Linda. Can you share a bit more about the tech environment and production solution like Spark running, real-time solution, and Kubernetes? I think the question is quite kind of broad, but if you can share any light on this, that would be great. Tech environment and production solution like Spark, real-time solutions, and Kubernetes.
Yeah, so I think Spark and real-time solution. Yeah, there's a bunch of details here. All of this Spark, Apache Spark, real-time data processing pipelines, and Kubernetes. All three are kind of like universes within themselves, and these universes kind of attract each other. So basically, there are some companies that are actually running Spark on Kubernetes now, and real-time systems, you can actually use Spark to build a lot of real-time pipelines. You can use Apache Beam also, or Flink, or there are a lot of programming models that you can use to build a real-time pipeline if that's your goal. In terms of a production solution and an environment, it really depends. Like I have seen companies actually move towards the Kubernetes route, and this actually goes really well with the question that was asked about DevOps. So a lot of companies are embracing Kubernetes, right? They are getting rid of the VM structure and having running everything in Kubernetes, having a Knative architecture. Now, when that happens, even the data teams are moving towards running their solution on Kubernetes. So we are seeing a growth in adapting Kubernetes even for data applications. So that kind of systems are coming up in production also. Other than that, when it comes to Spark or Beam or other these platforms, they're basically kind of two ways to run this. You can manage your own VMs and run it, or you can use a managed version that's available in the market. So that can be Dataproc for Google, EMR for AWS, or something like Databricks or something of that nature. So I think environments in production are something that really vary, and depending on which company you're joining and what you're trying to do, and how their current systems are set up, there'll be some permutation combinations of this that will be running. Edwin, do you want to add something to that?
Yeah, I agree with you. So in terms of platforms, I think Kubernetes, has been, super hot in the industry for the past few years. And, as Pratika mentioned, a lot of, companies trying to move their Spark, transformations to the Kubernetes, and Spark really having the patch in terms of using Kubernetes as kind of like a master to managing the process. But in terms of Spark streaming or batching, I think the industry trying to moving towards more like a unified kind of a computation mode, which combining the the incremental batching and also the real time into like a single API interface, and then can really deal with the challenges as like as a unified kind of process. Apache Beam and also Flink is kind of those the technologies that able to unifying the API and the interface. I say different company trying to thinking about how to spinning up their infrastructures differently. It really depends on what's the technology flavors and their supporting models. But definitely Kubernetes is in the right direction in terms of how companies should be, hosting the infrastructures that can, minimizing the cost and maximizing the output in terms of, the human interventions with the infrastructure setup and, and maintenance. Yeah, so back to you, Xiaohua.
Thanks. So next question is related to interviews. What are the most asked questions for data engineers in interviews? That's hard to say, but I think you've both interviewed people. So what is your most asked questions?
I'm actually trying to think of what was the most. Actually, I've given plenty of interviews and I cannot put my finger on any one question that was asked a lot. So the most asked area maybe for me was back when I was interviewing, it was around Apache Spark, because that was my background. And I've not been interviewing lately, so I have little information here, but I think it really depends on where you're coming from. Like if you're interviewing with working in the industry for a while and then you're going for a role, I think they'll look at your resume and see what kind of work you've done. Even if you're doing GitHub projects and just getting started in the industry, they're going to ask you questions about your projects. They're going to go a little deep into that and understand what you're trying to do. No company is going to ask you something out of nowhere when they know you've not worked on it. That is not how companies conduct interviews. They will actually just ask you what you have done and drill down deeper into it. So I'm sorry, I don't have one common question that was asked to me a lot, but yeah, this is my general advice, that whatever you're presenting in your resume, make sure that you know it in depth, and that'll really set the stone for you. Yeah. Edwin, do you want to add to that any common questions that you've seen?
Yeah, I mean, so basically, I see a trend in terms of how companies are conducting the interview. Is basically, as Pratika said, it's really depends on what you has been done, and what you mentioned in your resume, and usually the interviewer probing those kind of technologies or the project you have been delivered, and really understand which part of the deliveries you have been participating with, and how deep you are really understanding in terms of the technology kind of choice you have been made, and also how kind of like how did you kind of working with your team, and then what's the pros and cons, and if you can design this from scratch, how would you do it differently, right? Those kind of common questions that I see people ask. But let's say, for example, if the let's say the experience you mentioned in resume, it wasn't really something that the interview can probe all the way to the end. I see the common pattern is the interviewer usually giving a questionnaire, but it's more like a small project, right? Let's say, okay, giving you these several tables, how you can get in this value, how you can get in that value, and how you can say joining this data in a very efficient fashions, right? And I think those type of questions are common these days. And the other thing that I'm seeing is like very common, it's some like coding interviews, right? Like, for example, giving you an array and asking you to, let's say, for example, finding some relations within the the inputs, just to see whether you have a general sense that has been developed based on your observations on the data. So yeah, it's really depends on the interviewer's flavor in terms of how they want to conducting the interview. But I say scenario-based interview and also probing your resumes are the common patterns that I've been seeing and which I have been using a lot. Yeah, but if you ask me a specific question, I say Spark related and also Kafka related questions are the kind of high frequent interview questions that have been kind of conducted during the past.
Thanks both. So Harsh has some questions. He raised his hand. So Harsh, feel free to just unmute yourself and speak up.
Yeah, hi, thanks, man. My name is Harsh, and I'm sorry I'm late to the meeting, so I probably must have missed out a few questions earlier. Well, I'm from a different discipline. It's completely non-technical. I'm from civil and mechanical background. So, I'm having a thought about switching my career into data science field, and based on what I've understood of the people that I have had a chat with, people are saying, it's better off starting off as a data analyst and then move your way up to data engineer and data scientist. But my question over here is, what kind of challenges do you face, being a data engineer or a data scientist, and how is the similarity or the difference between both the roles, in building your career upwards, and what is the level of complication, being from a total different non-technical background? Is it even possible, or would you advise, or what kind of obstacles I might face and in this journey? If you can just give a small heads up. I'm not sure whether you've discussed this question already, but yeah, this is my question, please.
Yeah, maybe
Yeah, Edwin.
Pratika? Go ahead.
No, yeah, go ahead. I was just saying, Edwin, if you want to take that.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much for the question. I think, I mean, just to kind of like jump into the first question, like if you're not coming from like a technical background, and whether you can switch to become a data engineer. Okay, just a little bit kind of history. Like I have been teaching a kind of a part-time course, which is that was kind of originated in late 2018. So there's a 5 kind of batches has been completed during the past, and I have been taking students from different kind of background, and some from backgrounds of strong software developer backgrounds, and some from a database administrator backgrounds. I say, I see ratios of 70% to 30% in terms of 70% are coming from a related backgrounds, like in the tech field, and I do see 30% of the students are not super technical, and they are say converting from I don't know, like from absolutely not related backgrounds, like she was a teacher before and she trying to study in a course, and there's some fresh graduate that was study kind of biology before and want to study kind of data engineering, right? And just a little bit background, like I was study biology when I was in university, and then I switched my career in several months just to learning the kind of the technologies, and then you basically the rest is picking up from the job, right? So I say it's not really about what your backgrounds, it's really about how much time you're willing to spend in this field, and how much curiosity do you have, and in a technology space, and this will differentiating over time from you and your other peers in terms of how high you can go in this space. So I say without a technical background, that's absolutely doable, but it often means you have to spending more time and effort to catching up in terms of the things that you do not know. Yeah, I think that's kind of the the last point you were raised. I think you were saying some other points that I don't remember. Do you mind to to go over the question again? Like.
Yeah, sure, Edwin. I can do that. Well, yeah, thanks for your answers, man. Thanks for the information. Well, my last question was, well, when I had a chat with a few people are saying, it's better off starting as a data engineer and then moving up as a data scientist. But the other way around, people said, oh, you can probably take up a short course and then learn the basics of data science and Python and R programming, including machine learning algorithms. Although that training will just be 1 or 2% of your knowledge, because the rest you'll be able to learn on the job. But I'm kind of confused here. Yeah, I mean, people saying it's kind of both the points here. I mean, people are saying, oh, you can start off as a data engineer, but at the same time, I'm trying to think here. data engineer compared to a data scientist skill set, data engineers got to learn more programming, say Hadoop and Pig Hive and Kafka, Flume, and all of those languages compared to a data scientist where you're just using 2 or 3 languages like Python, R, and even SQL. But how and what makes it to say that data scientist is more complicated role compared to a data engineer when you're learning heaps more languages compared to a data scientist, like even 5 or 7 or probably even 10? Isn't there a subtle difference of complication levels in between both these roles? I'm trying to get my head around things here. If you can just give me a heads up or some sort of information.
Okay, I see your question. Yeah, I can, I think probably Shaohua and Pradika can give like, more, accurate comments, but just my take is there's some overlapping between, data engineering, the roles of and responsibilities and skill sets between data engineering and the data scientist, both interacting with the data from a programmatic kind of fashion. But data engineering is more engineering driven, which means you go into not only writing the data to not writing the code to manipulating the data, but you also need to understand how the system works, right? Like where you're going to hosting your applications, right? And how you're going to making sure your system operating in a highly available fashion, and how you can chain your system together so that you can really kind of providing the functionalities that the business requirements that requiring you to do. But being a data scientist, you requires more skill sets, right? Like understanding the domain. Let's say, for example, if you are working in a cybersecurity space, like only knowing how to write in code is not efficient. Like you have to know what is a DNS, like how does networks works in general, right? And how does the DNS resolution works, right? And how does the peer-to-peer network works. Like there's so many components and so many things you have to know in order to become a top-notch kind of data scientist in a cybersecurity space, right? And the same applicable to different industry as well. Like if you're working in a finance industry, right? How does capital market works, right? What is kind of like how does capital market operating in general? Like how, and do you understand all the terms, right? Like so. It really depends. And data scientists, we're talking about you are carrying a domain challenges on your shoulder, and then trying to solving the challenges with a different kind of models and different kind of like combinations of kind of your understanding in terms of the formula to make it work. But to switching careers between data scientists and data engineering, I think it can go both ways. Absolutely. But I remember you were mentioning, to starting from a data analyst and work your way up to become data engineer and data scientist. I definitely see a lot of students are actually coming from this kind of route. Like they were doing a data analyst, and they they want to do a little bit more piece in terms of writing more code, or like writing more software so that they can navigating through the system more like efficiently. I do see patterns like that. But like what I said, different levels of different kind of titles have different kind of expectations and responsibilities. But working your way up definitely is one of the options that you can go. Maybe Pradika and Shaohua, you can like commenting on what you take on this one.
Thanks, Edwin. I think it's a good answer. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks guys.
Cool.
I appreciate it, mate.
No problem. All right, let's move on. So there's a question. I think we have maybe 3 to 4 questions left. Next question: how to test data engineer technical skills during interviews? I guess the question is about like how technical interview work, or how do you guys run technical interview? I think some companies will give you some kind of hacker rank test. At least it's very common for data scientist interviews. And some organization will require some kind of lead code type of coding challenges. It's not that you really have to be expert in data structures in order to become a data engineer. But I think the reason why it became popular was because when Google is hiring data engineers, they're might be 1,000 people interested. It's really just tough for the recruiters and HR, to go through this screening, phase. So they have to do some kind of, screening and get, the applicants down to a small amount, and then they can do better filtering on that. Yeah, but do you guys have any? What's your take on this, Edwin, Pratika?
It kind of depends company to company, but the general, like there are multiple rounds that you will go through. So maybe the first round is when you talk to the recruiter and you express interest and you know more about the role. And if there's a mutual fit, then you go to the next rounds. And this is a general area depending on the company that you're applying for. Maybe things would differ. The next round that I've seen is probably you talk to somebody on the team who is working in that role already. So they'll do a first judge, a first interview about your technical skills. The second round is usually a take-home test. So like Shawa mentioned, like it can be a lead code or a hacker rank or something like that, where you try to solve a problem using their product or their given assignment. And once you submit that, they evaluate that, they see your code and see if the analysis was good, and if you're doing a data engineering, the pipeline is resilient, maintainable, you've followed the best practices. And after that, I think there'll be further interviews where you talk to the extended team, and if there are more technical interviews needed. So these are like the general rounds that you'll go through. And I think for any company, 4 rounds are something that are very common, and including everything. And then you are handed over an offer if everything works out. Edwin, anything
Thanks,
to add?
Pratika.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much like how I'm observing in terms of how different companies conducting, the technical interview. Yeah.
Cool. All right. So there's another question from Sean. I think he was clarifying his earlier questions. What's the skill level difference between an entry-level data science role and the data engineering role? Data engineer requires some different skills as noted in the table of programs, but would it be safe to say that someone will be entering the data space without a tech background, focusing on data science and analytics first, and then data engineering further down the road? Yeah, so I can answer the second question. Like my take on this is that you really don't have to become a data analyst or data scientist first before you become a data engineer. My experience tells me that we run a data science diploma program, and we actually do have like 12% of the students or graduates who landed data engineering jobs. I hate to say that, like getting a junior level data engineer job is all about learning the skills and knowing these tools. But if you look at the job market, I think a lot of employers will be interested in you if you have those advanced level skills, like knowing Spark, knowing cloud. But it doesn't make you, of course, I have to say, it doesn't make you a good data engineer. But when it comes to this recruiting space, what I've seen in data engineering right now is what I saw in data science many years ago. Companies are hungry for data engineering talents. There's definitely this scarcity of data engineers, modern data engineers out there, and that's why company will want to hire you if you have the right skills, even if you're lacking a lot of experience. And you will still get noticed. It's easier to get noticed if you have the right skills. And after many years of the hotness of data science, and I think data science job market right now is very competitive. So it takes a lot more effort to prove to show the employers that you're hireable as a data scientist, and it's all because supply and demand. Yeah, that's what I would like to say. So I think you can become, you don't really have to, you can just learn all of these skills and work on hands-on projects, and you can go directly into data engineering. And there's no such, and data science is not really superior to data analyst or data engineering. Or data engineer is not a job, that's superior to data science. It ultimately, I think it comes down to what is the right fit for you, right? So if you want to become a data engineer, you may enjoy optimizing things. For example, if you can tune Spark jobs to run more efficiently, you get that data pipeline that used to take 5 hours to complete, now it's down to 20 minutes. And if you like feel excited about that, data engineering could be a lot of fun for you, right? But data scientists, on the other hand, they might be enjoying taking on a lot of new challenges, working on different business or data challenges, and also enjoy communicating with the marketing team, operations team. That might be a good role for you. So yeah, that's my answer to the second question. Do you guys have anything to add?
Yeah, that's pretty comprehensive, Xiaohua.
Okay. All right, cool, thanks. And there's also a question about, I think it's about interviews as well. So what percentage, how much percent questions do you need to get right during a tech interview for you to pass the interview? What are the most important factors for the tech interviewers to be happy about your performance, I guess? So
maybe I
do you
can,
guys have any? Yeah.
you can give a try. I think, I don't know what this person's name. I think you're probably in the process of, like getting a, in a job interview. So you ask a lot of job interview related questions. But definitely I like to help you to just giving you in terms of my take on this. Okay, so first of all, this job interview is more about like the person who's giving you interview very likely to end up working with you in the same team. So what the interviewer really trying to understand is within the 45 minutes, are you able to demonstrating that he's able to work with you, right? Are you a workable person? Do you have the foundations or the knowledge or the basic skill sets to fulfill the job, right? So that's kind of what the person is really trying to understand. So I mean, you do not need to get every single question right, but you have to demonstrating that you can think independently and you are knowing the foundations to get a job right. So let's say, for example, if he asking you, okay, like we're using, let's say, for example, streaming right now, like, have you done streaming before? You can say yes, or you can say no, right? Either way will go. Where does the job? It really depends on how you're really telling the story, right? You can say, no, I have not, but based on my observation, like streaming is kind of, there's two ways you can do streaming. You can do incremental, batching, or you can do like real streaming, like how you do whatever. So, or you can just honestly say, okay, never done streaming before. All I did was, a batching. Interview will happy to take no as an answer, as long as you are giving your response in a very natural and a very humble fashion. I think anyone won't criticizing you for some of the technologies you never deal with before. But if you are writing some information in your resume saying you've done something before, but you're not able to really explain or kind of in terms of the details, then that's the time is raising a red flag for the interviewer to say that you're really just trying to putting things up in your resume to in order to get an interview, right? So I say be honest in your resume, and if you do put something in your resume that you've never done before, making sure you do a lot of homework in order that you can continue the conversation, right? So the most important factors for the tech interview to satisfy, like what I said, it's more like a conversational base, right? Making sure, think about it, do not treating it as more like an interview. Think about there's a challenges during the work and how you're able to working with your, interviewers or, going to be your future co-workers, how you guys going to working together to solving that problems or challenges, and demonstrating, like you're willing to, participating in those kind of, decision-making process, and you probing the questions and making sure you have all the information before you answer a question. And I think those are usually helps for the interviewer to give give you a good impression. So that's kind of my take for that. And Pradika, I'm pretty sure you have some like comments on this one in terms of how you appreciate a good candidates going through the interview.
Yeah, I really agree with everything Edwin said. Actually, it's really not about the percentage of questions you get right. There are some things that maybe you're not aware of. Tech is a very vast industry. Not all of us are aware of everything. So all of that is really granted. They don't expect you to be a master of everything, but having context and bringing the skills to the table that you are aware of and you are good at is always helpful, and just proving that you're ready to learn other things. So that curiosity and that eagerness to invest in your career, I think, goes a long way. And that should really do the trick in getting invited to further rounds of the interview.